And if you push down, these little hooks are called times, and it deploys, and the area of thermal coagulation is about 2 centimeters maximum. Okay, so that's it. And before you start, we've been told, I'm not sure why, but I think it's just to improve conductivity, is to flush about 2 or 3 centimeters of normal saline through that before you start. And you can actually aspirate amniotic fluid, so you can do an amniocentesis when you do just prior to doing RFA, but you can't do a CBS. So this has to go into amniotic fluid. Mm-hmm. Okay. And to insert it into the maternal abdomen, you usually need to make a little nick with a knife so that it goes through the skin. It's quite difficult to just go through the skin without doing that. So that's the needle. The site for insertion is obviously the cord insertion site of the fetus. This is not something you do in the placenta. So this is something that you go into the cord insertion. So if that's the baby and that's the cord insertion, you want to go sort of just adjacent to it, but not into the cord. Don't puncture the vessel. You want to go just next to it, and you want to go just inside you want to go just inside the cord insertion, and you want your needle to be just underneath it, to make sure that you get all the 3 vessels of the umbilical cord. If you go too deep, or if you go too inferior, you might miss the vein. So again, or the artery. So just make sure it's right underneath, and as the vessels bifurcate, you catch all of them when you deploy the tines. So that's the needle. The other thing that you need to be aware of is the machine itself. So we've set, this is the temperature that you want to set your coagulation to. It goes up to a maximum of 120 degrees Celsius. And for most fetal medicine procedures, between 110 and 120 is sufficient. Okay, you don't really want to go below that. This is the wattage of the energy, and again, anywhere between 100 and 120 is sufficient. I tend to use 100. When I do this procedure, for me, easy for me to remember, I use 110, so that way I don't forget. I don't try to think about it too much. So 110 degrees and 110 watts, but you can choose whatever you want. And this is the time for each cycle. So normally, when you're doing a fetal medicine procedure, it is usually about 2 to 3 minutes. So we've reduced the time to 1 minute here, just so that we can go through, everybody gets a chance to go through, but it's usually about 3 minutes per cycle, okay? And it's done under ultrasound control, obviously. So we'll go, so everyone's happy with that?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go on to the procedure. So it's not easy to see on the screen, but we'll try. So it's just like doing an amniocentesis. You want to go into the cord insertion site, adjacent to the cord insertion. Okay, and you'll normally hear that sound as the needle just goes into the maternal skin, because that's just the temperature difference. Can't really see very clearly, but anyway, there it is. Okay. So once it's in, okay, your assistant will sort of deploy the tines. And remember, you're doing this under, so you can exactly see where the tines are. You need to make sure that those tines are inside the fetus and not coming out of the fetus. And it's easy to come out of the fetus if you're doing it early gestation. So once it's in and you're happy, we start the machine. Okay. And as the operator, it's your responsibility to keep an eye on this temperature. So as soon as it goes into the maternal abdomen, this temperature will go up to about 36, 37 degrees. Okay. And you need to keep an eye on the temperature, because sometimes one of the this reflects the temperature each of those hooks, each of those times. So you might find that one is much lower than the other. And if it is, just rotate the needle a little bit. And what you want is for the tines to touch tissue, because the temperature doesn't go up very well if it is in a very hydropic fetus or a very cystic acardiac twin or something like that. It has to be against solid tissue for it to go up well. So just rotate it either way, whichever way you want to rotate it. And although I've put the probe down, in real life you're always looking with the ultrasound. You don't take your probe off, you're always looking. one time, one temperature is much lower than the other temperature, so I've rotated it now the other way to try and get it up. And if your target temperature is 70 and this is much higher, let's say this is 90 or 100, you can actually just press that and it isolates that particular time. Okay, so now it's reached the target temperature, and you'll notice that the countdown now begins.
So you said that you set the temperature at 110.
110
And
and,
then
the wattage at 110. So now we've set a lower target
Okay.
temperature here. So it's already reached, it's already heated for 1 minute, and it's now cooling down. So you need to wait for the next sound. So don't try and remove the needle
Before.
once the cycle is over, because this is still very hot, and you'll just damage the, you'll cause thermal injury to the uterus and everything else. Okay, so that's now it's cooled down. So then, while you're holding, your assistant just pulls that out, and then you take it out. Now, usually you have to do more than one cycle, and if you're doing more than one cycle, so let's say you put that in there, and you've coagulated that area already. You really shouldn't just repeat it in that area, because the tissues have already been quite necrosed. You're not going to get good temperature rise. So you're supposed to just move it into another direction, or take the needle out completely and just go adjacent to it and find another bit there, and then deploy the tines and then run your next cycle. Okay, what's over there?
How do you confirm that it's